All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to
And
the
we
STEM
are
Files. We are
back
the
again. Oh,
no, go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
that was funny. Go ahead, bro.
All right.
Go
So,
ahead,
Definitely.
oh my God. So,
bro. First time for
what
everything.
Jabril was trying to say, right. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. On tonight's episode of the STEM Files, at our new time of 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be talking with Christina Waters. She is a food chemist with the Food and Drug Administration, and she's also an entrepreneur that helps STEM professionals thrive and grow in their careers. So stay tuned for more after this. All right. Well, as we mentioned before, this is the STEM Files, where we are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. I'm one of your hosts, Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical research scientist, and that's pretty much a scientist trained in biology in the laboratory setting to develop new treatments for different types of diseases. My background is in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. I'm joined by my right hand, my second mind, Jabril.
That's right. Peace and blessings, family. Great to be back. Jabril Muhammad, aka brilliant engineer. I am focusing on naval ship systems. I have a background in material science and engineering, basic study of the several different materials that are present and how their structures, crystal structures, impact their various different properties. Happy to be here. Always excited to get into it and bring on our guests.
Awesome. So tonight, this marks the first episode where we are now live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We decided to push our hours back a little bit so we can be available to you at a more comfortable time of the evening. We are excited for tonight's guest. We have Christina Waters. She is a food chemist with the Food and Drug Administration. She's also a very, very passionate and dedicated entrepreneur in STEM career development. So thank you, Miss Waters. How are you?
I'm great. Please call me Christina.
Okay, Christina. Awesome. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what you do for the FDA and what your company is about and how it helps STEM professionals grow and
Okay.
develop.
So my name's Christina. They said it. I go by Chrissy, so you guys can even call me Chrissy. So it's funny because my background is actually in analytical chemistry. I went to school for chemistry with a minor in pre-pharmacy, but I initially started out doing analytical, and the FDA kind of just fell in my lap. I applied for a position, and 2 years later, they called me. So I was like, hey, why not? I was at the time I was working for CDC as a contractor. I didn't really see a lot of upward mobility there. I love what I did. And I actually did biomonitoring research with cardiovascular disease. So Tariq, we have that in common.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was really cool. The difference between when I worked at CDC and now what I do, I still was helping the public, but the research I did there was more long-term. So it would affect like our kids and then their kids. What I do currently, I feel like it affects people every day, right? People eat more than they get sick. So I feel like I'm really contributing to the public health through food safety and just following one of my passions, combining science and public health.
So you said the FDA fell in your lap. Tell us about that story. Like what? Well, first of all, I'm actually interested in knowing more about how you were able to be contracted with the CDC, and then also go into that next phase, which was the FDA.
Okay, so I've always wanted to work for CDC. I actually wanted to do HIV and AIDS research, right? So like I said, I had more of the analytical part, working with like GCMS, gas chromatograms, things like that. I applied for internships year after year. My sophomore year, never could get in. And then when I won one of the positions that I did get after graduation, it just didn't work out. There was no insurance. The pay was really low. At the time, I was working in the private sector. And so I just couldn't take it. And then later on, the program got better at the CDC where they brought in contractors as opposed to like fellowships. And so I always tell my mentees, my clients, especially for science, a way to get your foot in the door with the government, CDC in particular, is through fellowships and contract positions. And then you can move your way up. So I did the contracting for 5 years. And like I said, I just really, in the lab that I was in, they were more contract based than like actual FTEs. And I'm like, I'm doing all this work for the government, but I'm not really getting credit. So I started applying to other positions, just kind of putting myself out there, networking, going to different networking events. And I met a lot of people from FDA. And the project that I was working on, we actually were doing a joint venture with FDA because we were testing trans fatty acids in human plasma. And I don't know if you guys know about the labeling that changed in 2001, I think, where they had to put the level of trans fats on food.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of the research for that.
Okay. You said in 2001?
Right.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry. The ruling started in 2001, but they didn't complete it until 2007.
Okay. I'm going to say you go all the way back to 2001 with them? Like, what?
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
I was in college, but I wasn't working for them yet. But yeah, the ruling is 2007. So, and then I think they finalized it in like 2010. I mean, most of your audience, you guys know how slow the government is. So things just take time. But yeah, so the FDA position, they called me 2 years after I applied for the position. I completely forgot that I applied for it. So I was like, can you please remind me, like what this position is? And once I interviewed there, I really like the culture. Yeah, I love that there's a lot of people of color. That was something different from where I was. Just what they did. I mean, it was a little bit routine. It wasn't like a lot of research based, which I was used to, but I felt like I could really make a difference. And it was an opportunity for me to become a full-time employee as opposed to a contractor.
Got you. I got a whole bunch of questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and let Jabril eat a little bit.
Okay.
And family, before we continue, just know if Jabril takes a long time answering the questions because he has a delay. So
yes.
Just keep that in mind.
I'm going off of when I hear you finish. So I hope I'm good to go right now. You started talking about, how it takes some time, and I can definitely bear witness to that. Everything getting the security clearance. I remember I was teaching 7th and 8th grade math and science during the time I was waiting for my clearance to go through as a now mechanical engineer working as a civilian engineer for the Navy. Um, you know, can you speak to, being a food chemist and that work that you've been able to do for the FDA, some of the work you've done in the CDC, the room for the innovative mind with working for the government and things sometimes taking the time that they take and having the red or yellow tape that they do? Did you ever feel restricted from an innovative sense, or were you able to find your niche and ways to be innovative and inventive with regards to the work that you were able to do?
I would say I was able to be a little more innovative at CDC. The methods, because so FDA is a regulatory agency, right? And so it's not really a lot of innovation that you can do other than new methods. If we have like a new analyte that we're trying to screen for. And so there is opportunity for innovation and method development. I mean, even with the vaccine, like, FDA was at the forefront of that. So there definitely is room for innovation. The lab that I work in specifically, the methods were already kind of in place, but we're actually currently working on like a high res mass spec method to screen for more of the analytes that I screen for. And I guess I'll talk about that later when you guys ask. And so that is in the works right now. And I didn't do a lot of the method development on it, but I did do the training, and they took our input as far as like, things to make it better, what we don't like, what we do like about the method. But I will say there's more innovation opportunities, like probably at CDC, but CDC is more research based. FDA is regulatory. So that's that was a huge difference for me. Just in terms of how I write up my reports, because at any given time, the industry, if they don't agree with what the results that we found, especially, if it's like the big money makers, they'll try to take us to court and try to, find any little thing like in our report. So from that perspective, but like I said, FDA is always at the forefront and trying to, new methods for new analytes that we're trying to screen for. So there is a lot of opportunity for research and development, but from my experience, I have more of that at CDC.
You get all that, bro?
That was okay. You mentioned, I did. You mentioned being a regulatory organization. Yes. And a lot of what I actually tend to do is, at my job, there's several different aspects, where I work. You have design, you have R&D, you have, inspection, validation, sustainment. So I tend to be more on the sustaining side. So there is a certain standard, and how well do these processes, components, systems, etc., adhere to the standard of how they're supposed to operate, how long they're supposed to operate, etc. Mm-hmm. So you tend to find that, hey, does this work according to how it's laid out? Does it not? And then write it up and show, hey, this is what you do to get back up to snuff. So, there tends to be less of an process when you're dealing with highly regulatory, in a highly regulatory mm-hmm. field of work. One of the things I am curious about is, have you had any insight into it? Several months ago, a year ago, you going around, stop eating romaine lettuce or whatever because there was a recall and this, that, and the third. Uh-huh. Do you have any insights into that type of process and what that looks like in FDA in terms of like, is everybody running around with the head chopped off like a chicken, or like what's that environment like when those things are happening on a wide level?
Yeah, it's crazy. So I work in the mycotoxins group, and mycotoxins is basically mold on food. So like if you have mold on your bread and it comes from fungi, it's the causes is like just poor agricultural practices, poor storage conditions, things like that. The romaine lettuce in particular, that was a microbiology case because it was E. coli. And so we have one of the biggest microbiology labs in FDA in the country. And they were at the forefront of that. They were at the forefront of the peanut scandal, the salmonella thing where people died and got really sick. And so I was not at FDA when that happened, but I heard that it was nuts. And with the romaine lettuce situation, my cube mate, actually, she's a microbiologist. And so they were working around the clock. I mean, they were working on weekends. It was crazy. I mean, but, they're working hard to get this under control, to find the source so that people can, for one, be safe, so that no one else gets sick. They can find, what the source, the cause was, and just to get people back eating their romaine lettuce, healthy. But yeah, it was crazy. It was definitely a crazy time.
Mm. Absolutely. You can go ahead, bro.
Okay. I'm just making sure I don't cut you off or anything like that. Yeah. All right. Yeah, you're good. You're good. I wanted to talk about, I wanted to clear up a few words. You mentioned earlier on in the show that you mentioned analytes or, mm-hmm. Measuring for certain things. So for the audience, what is an mm-hmm. analyte and why is that important in what you do?
Okay, so it depends. Analyte can be anything. So in my case, the analyte is the mycotoxin. But I don't know if you guys know, but there are hundreds of mycotoxins. Some of them are not as harmful as others. And so in my case, we screen for about 6 different mycotoxin analytes, right? And so basically when you're looking for these things, you set up methods in order to detect them. And so you will buy a standard that has these analytes already in them so you can see the different levels that they could possibly be in foods. And so after you prep the sample, get it ready, put it on the instrument, you will run a calibration curve alongside with it so you can see the different levels. And that way, if your sample does have some, you can see like where it comes out. And so we have tolerance levels for each different analyte. So you have some in like a trace amount in the food, but it's not harmful. But if you get above, so for instance, I can give you an example for the aflatoxin is a common one, and that one's usually found on like corn products, so like cornmeal, any kind of corn cereal, grits, flour, anything like that. Is 20 parts per billion. So that's, that's pretty low. And you're talking about a sample size would be like 10 subs of like Quaker grits, for instance. And so you would mix it up to make it homogeneous, and then you would do your sample prep, you would do the extraction, you get it down into this 2 ml tube and inject it on the liquid chromatographer, and then you get a chromatogram with your peak, and you do your statistical analysis on that, and that's how you get the number that the public would see. Like, hey, we found 20 parts per billion of an aflatoxin analyte in this grit product, and it's okay to eat. So it's a lot of work that goes into getting that number for the public.
Gotcha. And what exactly does the HPLC or the liquid chromatography, what does that do to the substance? Like, what is its purpose?
The purpose of it is to pull out whatever is not supposed to be there. So you're going to use liquid instead of gas, and you run it along a column, and then the column has different particles in it in order to pull that analyte out. And then you have to, of course, set your method. So you set the certain temperature. It has an injection port where it injects a certain amount that goes across the column. And then you have a detector. So I can't really get into the detectors that we use, but if you don't have all those parts, you're not going to be able to see, if there is something indeed in your sample. And then after the detector, Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm gonna let you complete that, and then I'm gonna go into the question. Go ahead.
Okay. But yeah, so basically the HPLC but I was telling Tariq earlier when we were talking, we're actually trying to develop a mass spec method, which is more accurate. It has higher resolution. It's more robust. So we can actually run multiple samples in like a day, like an 8-hour workday. And we can also screen for more than the 7 analytes that we screen for now, because right now we can only run a sample for one method. And so that's not the most efficient way. I mean, it works and we've been doing it for years, but we're looking to do that mass spec method, and just to get things out quicker and to get more of a broader picture of a sample.
Okay. Well, I'm very familiar with a lot of those tools. I've worked with in the lab, and some of them are very, I'm not going to say annoying, but very tedious to work with, because some of it takes a lot of time.
It does.
And I'm all into, I'm actually working on a project now that involves some of those microtoxins. So one of the questions I had was, why is there such a very large population that's allergic to penicillin? Does it have something to do with how it's grown or developed, or does it have to do more so with the compounding aspect of, actually putting the pills and the treatments together? I'm
not really sure about that, because I do more mycotoxins, MYCO. Not like gotcha. Not like the micro. So that would be more of like a microbiologist question. But I mean, just from my personal opinion, I think it's the latter, what you said, just like the different, people. And I also feel like the allergies are just being different now because of the, what do you call it? The food, how they're making the food. I think it's just different from like what our parents had and their parents. So it's just all this.
When you say making the food, what do you mean?
Yeah, processed food. Yeah, that type of thing. Just things not being homegrown. Because I mean, I look at my great grandparents, and like, they're really healthy. You know what I mean? They smoked, but they lived on a farm and they like grew their own food. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like
it's pretty much. Mhm.
Mm.
So it's pretty much
Mm-hmm.
safe to say that our resistance to certain treatments has to do a lot with how we were raised and brought up. You know, our
I think
diets.
so. Diet, I mean, for me, diet is huge. Like I listen to
Yes.
my body, and I tell people that all the time. They're like, "Oh, you eat so healthy." I'm like, "No, I just eat what my body says I can eat. Like if it's something that doesn't agree with me, I don't eat it again. Like it's that simple." And I get it. A lot of people, it's not simple for them like that. Especially with food, like just having that discipline. But I think that's a big part of it. Like just listen to your body and eating, because I mean I was looking up some research on eating for your blood type. I
Mm.
don't know. So
Hmm. Well, I think one of the reasons why it's so hard for people to have
Mm.
discipline when it comes to food is really that MSG. You know, that's a very addictive chemical. It keeps you coming back wanting more. You
right.
know, so when you're eating foods that have a lot of that in it, has a lot of the soy, you know, these things impair a lot of judgment. You know,
Yes.
so it's like, okay, you know that Wawa sub, you know, was like freaking bomb, but because of how they produce the meat, produce the cheeses, how they grow their vegetables, is going to keep you coming back for more. You're just not going to be
Right.
satisfied. And next thing
Right.
you know, you waking up and you got back pains and this, that, and the third, all because you don't have control over what you're putting in your food. You know, that makes a
Right.
big difference. You
Right.
know,
I
cool,
agree.
cool. Yeah, Jabril.
Mm. I just would, yeah, I would just like to add to that. You all were talking about issues with food, disciplining ourselves around what we eat. One of the things I'd like to offer in addition is that media or imagery and culture is very strong. So in America, food, eating, the act of eating is on television, social media, over the airways at all times. It's hard to duck and dodge and not be met face to face with something involving food.
Right.
Food is also a pastime. There's a
Right.
lack of regimented time, at least in this dispensation of time, on when to eat, how much to eat. So you eat on the go, you eat at home, you eat watching TV, you eat talking. It's like if you wanna have a business meeting, what do? You meet for lunch, you meet for brunch, you meet for dinner, right? So and then you talked about your great grandparents, right? And I think in addition to when we talk about, my great granddaddy's wheat bread isn't my wheat bread too, they also live much less of a sedentary lifestyle. So they were up and about a lot, right? They lived more in the sun. So we're in our cars, we're in our homes, we're in our cubicles, right? But you talk about back in the day, people played outside. People walked
Right.
around. They let the sun hit them, and that vitamin D as well as other associated vitamins from that sunlight at different times of the day really help your immune system to function in its proper way. And I think a lot of times what people don't understand is the body is equipped to do a lot of things if you let it,
Yeah.
you know. And I think too often we get in our own way, or for lack of a better, the proverbial shot in the foot with regard to how we eat, how we live our lives, and then we wonder why we're so sick. It's because we are like hampering our own body's ability to do what it does. So
Yes.
that was key. And then you said something too, which was so key, is people eat more than they get sick. So you felt that you were being helpful getting in the lane of food
Hmm.
to try to do what you were. That was great. Actually, off that part.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time. You went out.
Oh, I just wanted to, that's, I was just saying, I just wanted to offer that in addition to what was already
Oh,
said.
okay. Yeah, but I like that you brought up, about our grandparents just going outside, because like my grandfather, he's still, he's 86 and he still gets up. Like he just built him a house. My dad helped him, but
Wow.
it's like, yeah, because his old house had like mold in it. So he tore that one down and built another house right across the street. And I'm just like, people don't do that kind of stuff anymore.
Mm. Yeah, it's a
Right.
it's an
Right.
interesting journey, food, I would say, is one of the hardest things to master when it comes to self. Mastering what you put in your bodies as well as your mind and your spirit. Those are like the top three hardest things to do in terms of
Yeah.
self development.
Yes.
It's extremely hard.
Yeah.
Um,
I always tell
yeah,
people I like to feel good. I don't want to wake up with migraines or just feel sluggish. So it's like anything. I always go back to the food, meditating, exercise, and all those things. But if you keep that type of mindset, then I think it'll be easier for you. And I think one of the biggest, like I would say, I guess, celebrity people is Tabitha Brown. I don't know if you guys follow her, but she almost died, and she literally changed her diet. She
Yeah,
became vegan.
yeah. See the truth.
And not only did she save her life, but she's like a millionaire now just for being herself. Talking about being vegan and cooking her vegan meals and being a light. So I tell people, I'm like, man, you never know, like, how something can change your life. Like for me, she's
right,
like a
right.
huge inspiration. I'm like, man, I wish I could have did something like that.
Mm.
And it's not far fetched. It's definitely possible. Like I've
Yeah,
seen people, get to 400, 500 pounds, and the moment they switch up their diet and they make up their mind that this is it just all goes away over time.
yeah,
They start
yep,
seeing different versions of themselves over a
right,
certain amount of months or years. So it's definitely possible. I wanted to
yes.
talk about, you know, I'm actually save this question for last, but let's talk about your business, MyTris Consulting LLC. I'm curious about the name. So
So
there's yeah, so there's I have a picture of what a tris is in my mind just from being a scientist. So what
no,
is
it's not
it's
that.
not that. Okay,
It
cool,
it
cool. Just making
it,
sure it ain't
it
that.
it is a play on words a little bit, being a
Mhm.
scientist, but the name is actually my two kids' names. So my daughter's name is Maya, and my son's name is Tristan. So it's my Trish.
Gotcha.
Yep. So
Okay.
it's not as deep, but a lot of my science friends were like, "Oh, okay, okay."
Yeah, and I kind of figured that wasn't it because you want to market it to, even though it's marketed to STEM professionals,
Mm-hmm.
it's still not only being seen by them, like other
Right.
people can see it. So I
Right.
wouldn't even, even though I know what that means for me in that field, I wouldn't even try to assume that that's what that is because that's not all the people that's going to see it.
Right.
So tell us some more about that. Tell us how the company started. And what exactly is it you do?
So well, Maya is actually my bonus daughter, but I don't like to say step and all that. Like that's my daughter, that's my girl. But my son, after I had my son, and she doesn't live with us, so it's kind of still like we get her, but part time kind of. So it wasn't like a full time parent, basically. But after I had my son, I just felt like my time
Right.
became more valuable because I was like helping people. I was writing resumes for people, helping them get into positions, sending them job, mentoring them, like doing other stuff. And then I'm like, man, I got to find a way to monetize this, but still help people because I'm like, now I got this little baby. I got to, make this work, find time for him, and also building generational wealth, right? Something that I actually love to do, that I'm good at. So that's kind of how the business started. The inspiration, of course, the name was from my kids. But I've been doing resumes and helping people get into these industries for like 7 or 8 years. Like ever since I got on, if I can help somebody else, I'm like, especially Black people, I'm like, I gotta get us in here. And
Right,
so,
right.
yeah, and then I started getting people referring people to me, like, oh, Chrissy's really good at writing resumes, you know what I'm saying? And I was just doing this stuff for free. So I'm like, I gotta make this, something gotta shake. And so yeah, so that's how the business got started. I actually got my LLC like in August of 2019, but I didn't launch until November 1st. I figured
Mm.
fourth quarter, start you with the bang, you know.
Mm.
And I just really want to help because I felt like I'm a scientist, but I'm an extrovert, right? So I love talking to people. All my professors I'm cool with.
Oh, yeah, I can
Yeah,
agree.
on a first name basis. And I think because of that, I was able to get a lot of opportunities because I was very vocal, very friendly. And I even had one of my professors tell me, my biochemistry professor, that I should get an MBA, because she's like, you're it was kind of sexist a little bit, because she's like, you're pretty and you're very personable. You're good at science, but you should really look into getting an MBA. And I was like, okay, but yeah, but because of that, they would always tell me about internships, jobs, opportunities. But a lot of my peers, unless I told them, they didn't know about these things. And a lot of times I would be the only Black person in these, environments. And I'm just like, it's a lot of us that I know about. Why aren't we here? And so that was another big inspiration to just really help these kids find out about these opportunities. Because they have the goods, right? They just don't have the opportunity. So
Facts.
that's like my main focus. So I've helped maybe about 10 or 12 people land jobs since I started the business. Other industries, they just kind of wanted to move up in their career. I've worked with some senior level people, but my main focus is students and recent grads. That's my target demographic.
Get them while they're fresh, right?
Yeah, so I can help them and tell them you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. You need to be doing undergrad research. You need to try to get on the paper, talk to your professors, network. Don't just get an A in the class. That's not going to help you in the real world. So I'm huge on mentorship. So even though I do have paid services, I do resume writing, I do consulting, I still have 7 mentees. I still do a lot of mentorship.
So what do you well, I know Jabril got something brewing. Go ahead, bro.
Oh yeah, so I have a couple questions. I definitely can resonate with being, an engineer, scientist, and being an extrovert. I've been told many times that you don't seem like an engineer, and I look and I'm like, well, how many do you know? Because or I was homeschooled for nearly a decade.
Oh, wow.
Right, 2nd to 9th grade. So a lot of people thought I'd be social. See, you see. Be anti, thought I might not be able to play and connect with others. I'm one of the most extroverted people I think a lot of the people I know. At my job, I tend to be different. But I'll walk in that, and there's never been, one of the things I want to speak to you about is, I see and we see a lot of these advocacy engagement type companies, which are good. Right. And I think that one thing I'm always trying to think about when it comes to our children, our people, is there or what's the logical next step to engagement and advocacy? Once we're engaged in that, once we're advocating for opportunities, then what is the next step in making the reality of
you're breaking up
thriving on a very large level? What's the next step to that?
I'm sorry, you broke up a lot doing that. So you said the next step to engagement, can you
okay. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So we engage, we get in the pipeline, advocate for positions, we advocate for access, we advocate for these things. The logical next, the next rung, if you will, in the ladder toward widespread STEM success for our people. What does that look like, and how do we get there?
Well, for one thing, doing these podcasts, representation, just paying it forward, giving back, showing kids what an engineer looks like, what a chemist looks like, what a biologist looks like. You know what I mean? Because the images that they've seen for all these years doesn't look like us. And so doing things like this, doing these interviews, podcasts, going to speak to schools, things like that. I know at FDA, we have a communication specialist who specifically with HBCUs. And so they do a lot of recruiting at HBCUs. I'm on that committee. One thing that we do with Spelman College in Atlanta, I'm here in Atlanta, we go and we do mock interviews with the sophomore students, the ones that are interested in working for the government, doing research, things like that, getting them ready. I think that's the next step as far as like, telling them about the opportunities, but also getting them prepared, right? And so I know a lot of companies now, especially after 2020, like they're really getting into the the EEO type of programs and making sure the diversity and inclusion, is up to par. So I feel like a lot of bad things happened last year, but I think it also brought out a lot of good things. Just making people more aware of these things and cultural sensitivity trainings. I can go on, but I definitely think that's the next step. Like, not just telling the people about the opportunity, or the kids, or the especially particularly minority, Black and brown kids, about the opportunities, but also getting them prepared for it too. And also the communication specialist that we have, she also does. They have like every Wednesday night at 7 different sessions for students. So like last week it was like interview tips. Week before that, how to network professionally, how to send a professional email. Those things are important, because if you don't know, then you can mess up our opportunity by sending an unprofessional email or not connecting with someone on LinkedIn the professional way. So I definitely think that's the next step to getting more engagement and actually getting people into these positions and into the roles.
Me, I think one of the things I've grown to do well is know how to be professional, but be authentic. I think sometimes in our quest to be professional, we get about dry as cardboard. And then sometimes we'll get super loose as if we know somebody. But I think there's that line you draw in the sand in the middle. You can be yourself. You can be real. We're not capping. But what we're doing is I'm gonna show who I am, but I'm gonna be professional. There's been many a times that I might use them when I'm dealing with a supervisor or somebody, but you always know what I'm bringing to the table to him, and I'm not jobbing and trying to be somebody that I'm not. One last question, I'll turn it back over to Tariq. I think this is very, important to me. I think other entrepreneurs out there. As an entrepreneur that is still trying to have a 9-to-5 feed what it is that they're building, is there ever a time should or can put entrepreneurial ventures on your resume when applying for a position that may be similar to what you're doing or in a similar field?
Yes. So I definitely encourage that. It also depends on the position. For federal positions, the resumes are pretty standard on what they want and, what they want to see and how they want to see it. But especially in the tech industry, I would definitely put entrepreneur task on there. And even for me, even for me, because I'm also a lieutenant in the commission corps, and I was talking to my mentor the other day, and I was telling her how I was having some difficulties like with my website. I was trying to update something, and she was like, "Wait, you know how to do websites?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know how to do websites. I did my website."
Right. I did my website.
Right. But she's like, "No, you should add that to your CV, because we need and now I'm on the website committee for the Junior Officers Association." I'm just like, how did this happen?
How did I get here? Right.
Yeah, and this is a volunteer type thing. So on top of my lab work, and I'm volunteering on this website committee. and I'm like making updates. And to be honest, it's a great learning experience. And also too, they can kind of like be intertransferable. So you can learn things on your 9 to 5 that you can use in your business, right? And so I think they definitely should be put on there, especially for my tech folks.
Right.
You know, you said something very interesting. You said, you know, I know how to build my website. I don't know how to build, you know, websites in general, because, you know, people, you know, Jabril, my wife, they get on me all the time. You know, I should be making a business out of graphic design because I apparently have some type of skill set in it. I don't like doing it for other people. Like I just like doing it for OMS. I like doing it for the STEM files because it's fun. I like to do it. You know, I have a good amount of creative control in it. You know, whether it's what I want, whether it's what Jabril wants, you know, I'm not sitting here chomping at the bit waiting on somebody to get back to me on what they want. I can just go ahead and do it.
Right.
You know, so
But you never know, right? You may not want to do it now, but later on, because that's what I said. I was like, you know, maybe later, maybe I would like to, you know, people ask me all the time, like, who did your website? And the crazy thing is, I was actually trying to pay somebody to do the website. They never got back to me. A few people, and I was like, and so I just got tired of waiting. I can be very compulsive sometimes. My husband always tells me that. It's bad with shopping, but it's good with other aspects in my life, like my career, because it's really just helped me to continue to excel. But yeah, I ended up, you know, doing my own website. I know how to make the changes now. I'm actually pretty good with it. And so, you know, people are like, oh, yeah. So, but I feel you though, like that's in addition to everything else you do, right? You just don't have the time to really, and you're not as passionate about doing it for other people.
Yeah, so it's not there.
It won't be the same.
Right. Like if somebody I know come out, you know, reach out to me and be like, you know, Tariq, you know, like if it's an uncle or a friend or whatever, I would consider, you know, doing it for them. But like to actually put it up there as a service and be like, hey, I do websites, logos, this, and the third. I don't have the patience for it. Right. And if it's not science related, it ain't happening. Right. You know, so I get into that decision making process where I'm like, okay, you know, when it comes to designing our own content, it's to develop what we're doing or what we have in our minds. I cannot sit at a desk for 4 hours working on somebody else's thing, especially when even after I've worked on it for 6 hours, they still don't like it. You know, so it's just a matter of, you know, having the patience to want to go out there and do that. But you really know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've helped some people, and even now, like I published a book last year. And so one of my coaches, because I had a business coach at one point just trying to, you know, help me navigate. She had a client who wanted to publish a book. So she's like, you've done so well. Like, can I send her your way? And I'm like, I don't consult on book publishing. Like I went to Google and I figured it out. You know what I'm saying? But it ended up working out. Like she actually paid me for like my consultation rate for like a STEM professional. And so it was kind of cool. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll do that if it's like a STEM book, because my book is a STEM book, obviously. But yeah, it's crazy the opportunities that come your way, you know, and you don't want to like be ungrateful. But at the same time, you know, if that's just not your passion, it's, you know, I feel like you won't be your best for somebody else if you're not really passionate about it. But I actually did help her pretty well. And my business coach was really upset because she's like, you didn't charge her enough.
I get, that whole charging enough, and you know, you're trying to be, because you know you're not a professionalist, so you're not trying to charge up the you know, trying to charge a ridiculous amount. But at the end of the day, if you did good work, you know, you put in a lot of time for it, then you should get that amount of money for it, you know. So it's just about, you know, knowing your worth, knowing your skill set. But, you know, and for those who are watching, if you see Jabril going in and out, it's just a lot of technical issues that he's experiencing on his end. So he'll definitely be back with us shortly. I wanted to save this question for last. I know we're coming up on about 45 minutes. But I wanted to save this question for last because it's literally the number one topic in the world right now, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the vaccine for COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know with you being, in the working for the Food and Drug Administration, you're very limited on what you can say in terms of just certain policies and procedures. But what is your personal opinion on the way the vaccine was developed, or
Mm-hmm.
the how it was released to the general public?
So my personal opinion is initially, like everybody else, I thought it was quick, right? But then after watching different interviews, kind of doing my own research, the basis for the vaccine, the mRNA, has been researched on for years. So like that's nothing new. And then when you look at cases like I don't know if you guys heard of Henrietta Lacks and her cells and how they changed the face of science and research. If not, definitely look her up. Like she is like the epitome of black girl magic. Like her cells pretty much have outlived her kids, and people were able to do research on polio, HIV, cancer, and all these things because of her cells. But I think about things like that when I think about the vaccine. And I also, being a scientist, I do believe in vaccines. I think some of them I think can be avoided. Like for instance, I don't get the flu shot, right? I got sick maybe like 8 years ago from it, and so I just don't get it. But what I do during flu season, I cut back on sugar. I make sure I increase my vitamin C, take a lot of vitamins. I do my sea moss, my elderberry. I try to do a lot of natural, and I even do that with my son because I don't let my son get it either. But the ones that whooping cough, all those things, like millions of people die from that. So I do think vaccines are important. And when it comes to the COVID vaccine, I feel like people should do what's best for them, right? I did have a close relative to die from COVID-19. And just to put perspective on things, she did have lupus, but still, you know what I'm saying? Like she shouldn't have died. Like this shouldn't have never happened, but so I feel like the people who have lost people from it, people who have pre-existing conditions, if they want to get it, I think that's great. But I do feel like we shouldn't judge each other either way. If we don't want to get it, we're hesitant. If we want to wait it out and see how it goes for some. And at the same time, if you do want to get it, I feel like people should be just more respect both sides of it. Because somebody who is living in fear, who has COPD, for instance, they are afraid to leave their house because they're like, I have this upper respiratory issue. COVID can take me out any day. And so if they have something that they feel like can potentially save them, then, they got it. Like my mom got it. My mom takes care of my grandmother and she was completely fine. My grandmother got it. But that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I feel like my grandmother, and when I tell you this lady had no issues with it, like she didn't even have pain, like at the injection site, like nothing. And I'm like, I told my mom, it's all that garlic she's been taking all these years to manage her blood pressure. Like she never took medicine, but she just felt like with this vaccine or with the COVID-19 in general, her being elderly, you know, they got it. So it's just I think you do what's best for your family and do your research and just don't judge people either way. So if somebody doesn't want to get it, great. If they do, that's great too. So
Can I say something to that? I think I've switched devices. I think I'm doing a lot better
Yeah, I
now.
see. I see.
yes,
Thank you,
yes,
God.
yes.
Yeah, so I was
Woo.
like, I figured it out. I thought it was my signal. I'm like, for some reason, it's my phone. So sorry about that, guys. There's 12 minutes left.
That's okay.
No, take
So
your time, bro. We good.
one of the things that you were saying, you know, being completely honest, I have no intentions. Tariq has no intentions on getting the vaccine. One of the things that I feel like, seems to be very apparent is there are a number of immunotherapies, there are naturopathic remedies that doctors themselves have taken, people have taken for years,
Mhm.
decades, but that doesn't seem to come to the forefront when we're dealing with how to combat COVID-19.
Right.
whether it's an actual pill or some type of other drug. It's like, take this vaccine, right? What about increased liposomal vitamin C drippage? That's been something that has been utilized to be effective. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you throw around terminology and phrasing like, oh, black people are adversely affected by this vaccine, that's
Mm-hmm.
dangerous. Because what
Mm-hmm.
tends to happen is you're made to feel like you're black, so you need this, which is not the
Right.
case. A lot of
Right.
our people suffer from underlying conditions because why? If you look at historically in our communities where we live, we get poor food quality, poor living conditions, poor water quality, and what tends to happen is you develop things generationally, making you more susceptible to something that you otherwise may not. Now I understand, right? People who have received or gotten things have been otherwise healthy, but you cannot convince me that my body in its natural state and me being generally deemed as being healthy, getting a vaccine is way more um, effective on my livelihood than my natural immune system and building through natural means, acquiring sunlight.
Right.
So, and I think there seems to be this culture, particularly with our black athletes. Again, LeBron James made a comment at the All-Star game about how his decision was going to be with his family. And
Mm-hmm.
then, I felt like the whole sentiment is like, because of your stature, who you are, and the position you hold, you should say you're going to take it. It seems like we're creating this climate and environment where to have a difference of opinion is
Mm-hmm.
evil
Right.
or is dangerous, or to just
Right.
simply question
Right.
something on the basis of fact. There is a adverse vaccine adverse reporting system for a reason. People
Right.
have been adversely affected by several different vaccines, so we can't brush things under the rug. If I want to be very comprehensive or strive to be comprehensive in my study of things, you know, I'm going to do that. And what my
Right.
decision shouldn't be aired all over the place or utilized to, expedite an agenda. So those are the
Right.
things I want to do. People should research for themselves and come to a conclusion. I have
Yeah.
my feelings and thoughts that are backed in certain things, and other people have their own. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where I am with it. But I do my best. I don't bash. Oh, you took the vaccine. Blah, blah. That's not me. But what you're
Yeah.
not going to do is convince me that I'm using my platform in a way that's detrimental to other people
Facts.
because I'm saying don't take the
Facts.
vaccine.
Right.
What I say is backed by certain things, so you just have to read it for yourself. So I just wanted to share
Yep.
that.
No, I agree. Like people, and I tell people all the time, like, and then a lot of people think I know more than they know. I'm like, I don't have that kind of clearance. Like, I don't, you
Right,
know what I mean? Like, I
right,
know what you know, and I try to do my best research, and I try to do what's best for my family. So, like I said, my mom felt like, because she runs a daycare too, so she's coming into contact with parents and kids, and she thought that was the best decision for her. So I supported her. I gave her all the research that I had, and like for me, I think I am going to get it, but I'm pregnant right now, so I'm not going to get it now. But
congratulations.
thank
Yes.
you,
Congratulations.
thank you. But I don't know. Like after I have the baby, I'll see how I feel then. But I just think at the end of the day, people have to do what's best for them. And I feel like people have to stop looking to like celebrities or other people or social media influencers for the answers. Like that's one thing that I don't like about social media is that you look to people for things that you should be looking for yourself. Like even like with not just that, but everything, politics, like your spiritual stuff, I hate when people say, "Oh, pastor said, pastor said." Like, what do you believe? Like, what do you? How do you interpret things? You know what I'm saying? So, that's kind of my take on everything in my life. Like, I want to have my own opinion based on my own research and what's best for me. And maybe that's the scientist in me, but I feel like we need to get back to that. Like people having their own and not being, like you said, not being bashed for having your opinion on and your conclusion of what you came to.
mm, mm. Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
a whole that's a
We
whole nother discussion.
Right.
yeah, yeah. We coming up on now we don't have an hour limit or anything. Like we just like to cap it off at an hour. because we don't believe in having 3-4 hour long podcasts. We don't
And
we don't rock like that.
my son is like, where's my mom? He just kind of almost came in the room. My husband stopped him.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we're gonna close out. Well, it's actually a 2-part question, but I'm gonna make it real quick. So the first question being, you mentioned Henrietta Lacks, and it's a well documented issue where she had, I believe it was cervical cancer.
Yep.
And
well, some studies have said they misdiagnosed her, and that maybe it was uterine cancer, which is why, But
well, yeah, and whatever cancer it was, it was somewhere. It was in the reproductive system. I'm gonna put it that way, just because they still trying to rewrite, always trying to rewrite stuff. But anyway, so you mentioned the benefit that it had on scientific research, but there were a lot of poor decision making involved in that. When it came down to her, her family, them using the materials without the family knowing about it, them not receiving compensation for anything. So even though there was some benefit, is that benefit really of value if it was done in a poor manner of if it was done in a poor manner? Like, how does that taint the overall legacy of what she contributed to science?
Well, I mean, I think her legacy speaks for itself. I mean, I think that it's getting better with people like us talking about it and just putting out the facts. I will say it was done poorly. A lot of just from a moral perspective. I mean, it was just horrible. But out of that came HIPAA laws. You know what I'm saying? So now, and it's always going to be somebody who kind of takes the fall for things to be better, right? So I mean, I would even equate her to a MLK or Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? It sucked, but I think her family is like still fighting to get what's owed to them. But in terms of the contributions to science, it does have a black cloud over it, but I don't think it takes away from like her legacy and what she did, because it's just undeniable.
Absolutely. What she did was remarkable. Even though when she was diagnosed with this cancer, she wasn't willingly knowing she was doing anything.
Right.
So that's also the aspect. Like, how can someone have a legacy for something they weren't a willing participant in?
Right.
To me, that's almost like that to me is not so much and I'm not saying you're wrong or anything, right? This is just a difference of opinion. To me, that's not a legacy. That's being used to further an agenda.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of how you think about it, and I just don't sit well with that, knowing that she was used in that way to further whatever it is that they were trying to do, whether it was vaccine research, pharmaceutical research, or whatever they were doing, or whatever they currently do today.
Right.
Granted, those cells are very powerful.
Right.
They're long lasting. They get the job done, but there could have been a better way of going about it. So that's just my.
But the thing about it is, they never prior to Henrietta's cell, no cell ever lived outside of the body longer than a few hours, and so
they discovered something important.
Right, they were doing this to everybody, so they weren't just doing this to her. They were doing it to black, white, and to everybody. You know what I mean? But because of what her cells were able to do, and so I feel like because they felt like they were doing it already, that it wasn't, and they never had success with anybody else's cells.
Right.
But I feel like this was such a unique situation, and they just weren't prepared to really do it the right way in terms of letting her know, like, hey, because even if they did it right and then said, hey, your cell, like, this is what your cells are doing, because she was still alive when they realized that her cells were doing all this stuff, or even when she died, letting her family know, compensating them, changing the laws, something, because the scientific community at that time felt like they didn't do anything wrong. They felt like it was just in the name. They still don't. It was just in the name of science. Like, we were doing this with everybody. Like, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that her cells were not the same as everybody else at all.
Right.
Nobody else had, so. But no, I
Exactly.
agree with you. I mean, I don't want to say legacy, but I do feel like she's important. I feel like,
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to not tell her story because of the bad part in it. But I mean, she
Yeah,
changed,
definitely.
She definitely changed the face of science and just the research that
Yeah.
we have today.
Yeah. If anything, I would give the credit, even though she wasn't aware of it, I would still give her the credit of being
Oh, yeah.
the vehicle for why, science is the way it is. And also the good things that came from about it. There are
Right.
good things that can be done with cell culture, and different things in that arena, so
Yeah,
but
that's why I
yeah,
said
yeah.
her. I didn't mention the doctor or the scientist. I
Oh yeah,
said
yeah,
her
yeah. I got
specifically.
you. Most definitely.
Yeah, because like she was amazing. I learned that story. I'm like, wait, what? Like I heard because you learn about the HeLa cells like in biology. It's like a small little chapter, but you don't know that it came from a real like who the person was, or there's a black woman. Like I
Right.
learned that way later. And I'm like, man, why is she not? And see, that's what I feel like her family needs to fight for now. Like not just the money part, but like the history and like, yeah, she has the book, Oprah did the movie, but like she needs to be in history books. Like I mean in the science books. So people know like this was a real person
Yeah. Yeah. Black
who
people
she
have a
was.
hard time getting credit. They definitely not going to give us credit for bodily specimens that they took from us and used for their own purposes. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of fighting when it comes to that.
Right.
And because of how just the overall history of medical science and medical research, them coming out and apologizing for that, you're probably never going to see that.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of us
Not in
doing
our
our.
lifetime. I still have
Yeah,
hope.
it won't be. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother show. We can go into that another
Yeah.
time. But Jabril, is anything like that real quick?
Yeah, I just want to add to the point you all are saying, and I think this kind of blends into what we were talking about with vaccines. You know, it is very apparent that we as a people have the audacity, but we have the right to be very skeptical of the medical system when it comes to anything that comes out. When people say that, oh, the onus is on the doctors to prove to black people that no, the onus is on the system to change.
Hmm.
Not that it will, but you as a doctor, like you as a president, you as a corporate tycoon, you're not the system, you operate in it. And what you do is you learn how to play the game, and the better you do in playing the game, the more successful you are as an individual. But very quickly you learn what the price of trying to trend set and shift a paradigm that has been working very well for what was put in place to work for. What it comes down to is trust. I don't I care, but when you gloss over a story and it's like, oh, but so much great, yeah, but came out of it, but yeah, what did you do in the context of bringing this great thing out for science? See, high character, moral conduct is what this world is missing when it comes to black people, poor white, brown, quote unquote minorities. I don't even use that term, right? But you have to deal with people on the basis of freedom, justice, and equality, particularly when it comes to STEM. For a long
Hmm.
Yes.
time throughout slavery and after, we have come up with inventions, innovations, and we get credit for the name, but those families of those people don't see no royalties.
Yeah.
So that's so when I was talking about that next step, we talked about engagement, advocacy, having equity, and that which that you put in place, that which people appropriate from you is so key. So you maintain ownership and you have a foundation, a firm foundation that your future generations don't start from zero,
Right.
right? We're tired of our babies growing up and having to get in line behind us to get a job. That's one of the major things when you start talking about having some stake, some skin in the game. So,
Right.
I definitely really like this conversation. Again, sorry, everyone, all the people watching for the technical difficulties earlier. I hope you still did enjoy the show. Tariq, did you want to do a quick her ask us a question if she had any, or you want to close out?
Yeah. Well, how much time you have, Christina?
I can do a few more minutes.
Okay, let's take about 5 more minutes to kind of like we like to ask our guests to ask us questions as well. We want to actually put so what you do with interviewing STEM professionals, we want to give you that opportunity to do that on the show right now. So if there's anything that you like to ask us about what we do, what the STEM files is, definitely more than welcome to.
Yeah. How long have you guys, like I actually like the name because I feel like we're probably around the same age, but I used to watch the X-Files growing up.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love the name. So how long have you guys been doing your podcast?
Yeah, well, yeah. So the X Files, that's exactly where the inspiration came from because that show was a whole lot of science fiction, But we wanted to showcase the plethora of Black STEM talent,
Mm-hmm.
in our communities, Black and brown, or anybody that of color or anyone in the ethnic sphere. We wanted to, you know, in mainstream media, like you go on YouTube, you look at all these different channels, all these different podcasts. Nobody is talking about STEM on a mainstream level, So we want to get to the point where that's us.
Yeah.
We want to help companies like STEM Media. We want to help companies like the STEM Sisters. Where all these groups of people that interview scientists and engineers, but
Mm-hmm.
we want to push it so hard so that it's in as many households as possible. So we've been doing it for about 4 years now, going on 5. We originally
Awesome.
started on right. We originally started on Blog Talk Radio, but we got away from Blog Talk because we noticed the trend, and the trend was, video streaming, live streaming. Everybody can see you and hear you, So we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to let people see the faces behind the voices and let people know that hey, it wasn't just random people interviewing scientists and engineers. There are scientists and engineers interviewing scientists and
Scientists
engineers.
and engineers. I love
Right,
it.
right, right.
Yeah.
So
When I saw
yeah,
y'all platform, I was like, man, 2 Black men. Okay, this is it. Because there is and I was actually looking that up. There's a STEM podcast with some ladies. It's called She Too STEM. I don't know if you
yeah,
guys have
yeah.
heard of them. Yeah. So it's not a lot, but I knew about them for a while even before I started my business. I was doing some stuff with them and or just following them on their pages and stuff like that. So I was happy to see you guys. And then another question I have is like, this is my final question I always ask, like my guests, some tips that you can give, I guess in your case, Jabril, engineering student, and in your case, Tariq, you were biomed, not biology.
Right.
Right. So like, what are some tips or things you wish somebody told you, when you were in school?
Oh, I'm gonna start. Um, okay, I'm gonna just take it a couple things. The first tip: the quicker you realize that you're not the smartest person in the world, the better.
The better.
Internalize,
Right.
internalize that you are not the smartest person on the planet. I don't care if you was first in your class, top 1%, captain of this, but you're not the smartest person in the world. Second thing, you will hate it at times. Throughout engineering school, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and very, very difficult engineering school. I saw grades I had never seen in my life. And I got and when I mean that, not that I saw the best of grades, I had been seeing that all my life. I saw some grades, I was like, that's a Jabril Muhammad next to it? Wait, oh, wait a minute. So
Right. Hold up.
look forward to being humbled. Not so much that you're going to not do well, but there'll be times where you will struggle. And the
Mm-hmm.
quicker you understand that to struggle does not mean you're less than, but to struggle means that you are growing. If you've never struggled, you've never grown. If you've
Right.
never failed in the sense that you've fallen down, you've never had to get up. So you've always
Right.
been up. And for me, if I'm employing somebody, if I'm looking at somebody, I don't necessarily want someone who's been down and out, but I do want someone who's faced some adversity and know how to overcome it. Right. The last thing is you are not your GPA.
Say that
I'm gonna
again.
say that again.
Deep. That's
You
deep.
are not your GPA. And then somebody could say, "Oh, well, you must not have done extremely well in school." Well, regardless if you got a 4.0 or a 2.0, you're still not your GPA. And you shouldn't want to
Right.
only be known for your GPA. You are that sperm that made it to the egg and came to existence. So you have intrinsic value before you even knew what a GPA was.
Right.
So learn to create skill sets, learn to live in your intrinsic value, and remember that before you got that grade in school, before you started going to school, you were a person that had value, that interacted with other people and shared in a transfer of energy. So you're not your GPA. And if you understand and internalize those three core principles as an engineer, and you remember, so last thing, you remember what it is that you made you fall in love with engineering. That will carry you far into the future. Remember that you love it, never stop loving it, and then do the things that make you happy. Stay humble and you'll go far.
I love that.
Yeah, and just from the biomedical perspective, our industry, and well, first I want to come off of what Jabril said about struggle. To me, and we all know this, that if you do not struggle, if you're not struggling and trying to achieve something, it's not valuable. Value comes from the struggle. So, and just coming from a biomedical perspective, our industry is tied to ideas. Our industry is driven by what can you contribute from your own intellectual thoughts, your own intellectual property. When I started my research, I was still in high school.
Oh
All
wow.
of the all of the elements of my research were mine. I didn't wait until I got to college to want to get involved in research. I looked into what I know, what I was studying in science and in medicine, and how can I use what I know now to contribute to science? What ideas can I come up with? Then after I came up with some of those ideas, I went back and did all the market research, all the Google you can think of, to see if this research is happening right now. It
Mm.
wasn't. So now I have an idea. I can write out study how research is done, how I can take my idea from an idea all the way to a fully functioning protocol or a procedure, or how I'm going to do things, and then take it to whatever school you want to take it to. You maintain, and I'm all for this. If you have an idea, make sure that you can protect it whatever way possible. The first step to
Right.
protection is writing it down.
Right.
So if you have an idea, secure it in such a way that when you get to the university or when you get to the school, now you can be like, hey, I have this research. Can y'all help me out with it? They can't dictate to you how the research is going to be done. Their names won't appear first on your research paper. Yours will, because it's your idea. It's your content. It's your intellectual property. So if you are interested in the biomedical sciences, if you're interested in doing some type of laboratory research, biological research in the laboratory setting, always make sure that you have enough intellectual stake in what you're doing. There's not, to me, it's one thing to help somebody, help a faculty member, or help a professor with their research, but it's another thing where they're helping you with yours.
That's
Right.
right.
So I'm all for, making sure that whatever you bring as much to the table as possible. So that's what I
And
would say to
and
anybody.
a lot of research professors want people to come in with those fresh
Right.
ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want that kind of initiative. They want you to be proactive in that way. They don't always want to. They want to see you have talent. They want to see you have
Right.
interest. They don't always want to see. How can I help you? How can I help you? How can I help you? God helps those who help themselves. So if you have an idea, you're helping yourself. So now God's going to come behind that and help you, and then you're going to get the help that you need for your research. It may take a long time to get it done, but that's good because now you're learning along the way. You know how to
Exactly.
conduct yourself as a scientist, conduct yourself as an engineer, and you'll be fine.
I love it. That's some good stuff. I should have been writing that down, but I remember most of it.
But you've always got the show to come back to, so it's right
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah. Because I actually had a client who was like complaining about her GPA. And don't get me wrong, some of the fellowships that she wanted to apply for, you did need a certain GPA. But I'm like, girl, you'll be fine. Like, we're gonna find you something that, because you got the goods. You just, at the time you were doing a lot of things, helping out your mom with the bills,
Right.
and I'm like, these are the type of things that you can talk to people about, when you're in an interview. If they ask you, why is your GPA low, or why didn't you get this? And on the flip side of that, I know 4.0 GPA people who did not get into med school, or who did not get into, you know what I'm saying? So,
or can't interview.
Right.
No personality. Right. No personality, or they can't get a reference letter because the professor or the research person they don't know nothing about them. They're like, oh, they got an A in the class. That's it. Nothing else. That's it. So I love that. I'm definitely going to share that on my platform, because there's a lot of people who get caught up on that number. And we're not saying that to say like don't strive for it, but at the same time, if you don't get it, don't be so hard on yourself.
Right. Well, this has been another edition of the STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. Jabril, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I had to stop myself from laughing. I don't know what it was, but the way you started off, I don't know, I thought that was funny. Anyway, yes, family. As we always say, this has been another edition of the STEM Files. Brilliant engineer Tariq Cardiac, joined by the awesome Christina Waters.
It's been an awesome show.
I've been thoroughly fed. I think every show's getting better and better. Make sure to continue to tune in, family, at our new time of 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday and Saturday. Your brilliant engineer, Tariq Cardiac. That's it, y'all.
Well.
Oh, yeah.
Before we go out.
Yeah.
So before we go out, I want to talk about our next guest. So we've had him on the STEM Files before, but now he's coming back to talk about his experience with Shark Tank. His name is the hip hop MD, or Maynard Okereke, aka the hip hop MD. He's going to be talking about his experience with Shark Tank and promoting his chicken salt company, and he'll also be talking about how he's made a significant impact on social media with the amazing content that he does produce and use to educate everybody on various science topics. The guy's a beast, and we look forward to having him next Thursday, March 18th at our new time of 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yes.
So with that being said, yeah, it's gonna be fire. So with that being said, once again, once again, thank you, Christina, for joining us. This has been another. Absolutely. Now, how can we contact you? How can those who are watching get in touch?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, MyTris Consulting LLC. Yep, we got the email right there. My website is www.mytrisconsultingllc.com. So yeah, but I definitely I know some people don't like DMs. You can send me a DM. I respond to DMs. I got a client the other day, like, hey, I need a resume. Okay. I think a lot of people feel like they have systems in place and people don't use them and they just still send a DM, but I don't mind. So.
Some people just don't care. Like, look, I'm gonna do what's convenient for me.
Yeah, they don't care.
Right.
You want this money or no?
Exactly.
Answer the message.
Right. So yeah, but thank you so much for having me, guys. I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, and I definitely want to have you guys on, interview you maybe separately, since you do two different things. Because you'll be representing the S, Tariq, and you'll be representing the E, Jabril. So yeah.
Yep. Absolutely, and we're proud of that. We're proud of coming from different, representing different STEM backgrounds. So we would love that opportunity.
Yes. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
Great. All right, family. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all for staying up a little later, or being engaged with us a little later at our new time of 8 p.m. I'm Tariq Cardiac, Jabril engineer, Christina Waters. This has just been the STEM Files. Peace.